Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice break and enjoyed the meal. So I'm going to start with another short story. It's about a man who was complaining to his doctor about his wife's hearing impairment. So the doctor advised him, in order to evaluate the extent of her hearing loss, to ask her something from a distance and then keep asking her, periodically moving closer. So he went home that evening and he says, "What's for dinner?" No response. He says it from about 40 feet away. He moved closer to about 30 feet. "What's for dinner?" Still no response. 20 feet. "What's for dinner?" Still no response. Finally, he comes only a couple of feet behind her and says, "What's for dinner?" And she says, "For the fourth time, it's lasagna." I think a lesson that can be learned from the story is that things may not always be as they seem, which is a good segue to our next presentation this afternoon. As mentioned in my introduction, the true significance of the Islamic Caliphate, in the sense of an individual being a successor to Prophet Muhammad, lies in one's spiritual affinity to Prophet Muhammad. It's when one develops the spiritual qualities of Prophet Muhammad and manifests them to the world, like the moon reflecting the light of the sun. Only then is one deserving of being his true successor or caliph. And this is the subject of our next presentation. Our presenter is Dr. Mohammed Ahmad. Some of you know him through his activities with the Interfaith Association of Central Ohio, along with his wife, Lubna Ahmad. Dr. Ahmad is the president of the Lahore Ahmadiyya Islamic Society, and it is under his leadership that we've been able to conduct all of the work that we are doing around the world, which will be reported on in detail after his presentation. So without further ado, I present to you Dr. Mohammed Ahmad.
Thank you, Fazil. I was going to steal one of Fazil's jokes, but the gray hair is a dead giveaway, so I'm going to abstain from that. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I seek the protection of Allah from the accursed devil. I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Good afternoon, everyone. As has been explained this morning, the Holy Quran makes reference to God raising successors or caliphs on earth. The one significance of caliph is that of a man. We are told that man has been created as a ruler on earth. The other significance of a caliph is that of being a leader of a community. And at least in the Sunni Muslim tradition, the first four caliphs, Hazrat Abu Bakr, Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Ali, and Hazrat Uthman, are regarded as the rightly guided caliphs of the early Muslim community, due to their having led the Muslim community along the lines of true Islamic precepts. However, there is yet another significance to the concept of Islamic Caliphate. It is based on the spiritual dispensation rather than the temporal leadership. As the Holy Quran states, and I quote, "God has promised to those of you who believe and do good that He will surely make them successors, caliphs in earth, as He made those before them to be successors." Caliphs. The words as He made those before them are significant. Just as the Holy Quran likens Holy Prophet Muhammad to Prophet Moses, as both were law-bearing prophets who provided detailed guidance on how to live one's life in accordance with the divine will, so too has the Muslim community been likened to the followers of Moses. Therefore, the promise in this verse relates to saintly figures who would arise among the followers of Holy Prophet Muhammad as spiritual successors, just as noble prophets arose in the Mosaic dispensation, following the laws and guidance revealed to Prophet Moses. This spiritual significance of the Islamic Caliphate is further explained in one of the Holy Prophet Muhammad's sayings, recorded in both of the most authentic books of Hadith, sayings of the Holy Prophet, the Sahih Bukhari and the Sahih Muslim. Holy Prophet Muhammad is recorded as saying, "The Israelites were governed by their prophets. When one prophet died, another would come to take his place. But there is no prophet to come after me. However, there will certainly be successors, and there will be many of them." This is the true significance of Islamic Caliphate. It is a spiritual dispensation of the righteous followers of Holy Prophet Muhammad who provide guidance to the Muslim community on contemporary issues of importance throughout the ages. I would like to elaborate on this. The Holy Quran provides a beautiful illustration of the relation between the physical and spiritual beneficence of God in the following ways. It states, quote, "Or who created the heavens and the earth and sends down for you water from the cloud. Then he causes to grow thereby beautiful gardens. It is not possible for you to make the trees thereof to grow. Is there a God with Allah? Nay, they are a people who deviate. Or who made the earth a resting place, and made in it rivers, and raised on it mountains, and placed between the two seas, the salt water and the sweet water, a barrier. Is there a God with Allah? Nay, most of them know not. Or who answers the distressed one when he calls upon him, and removes the evil, and will make you successors, caliphs in the earth? Is there a God with Allah? Little is it that you mind." In these verses, the wonderful signs of the existence of God are presented: the creation of the heavens and the earth, the manifestation of natural resources, the sustenance provided for all, and the regulation of universal laws. The wonderful signs of the existence of divine being are followed by an equally pertinent sign, and that is the manifestation of the greatness of man. But mark the contrast. This manifestation of the existence of God is not to be sought in the power of man as the conqueror of the forces of nature, but in his weakness and need for divine guidance and assistance. In the time of great distress, when man is unable to find help from any source, he throws himself on the divine threshold and seeks the favor of God. We are thus told that the manifestation of God's great power of deliverance of a weak mortal who finds himself in extreme distress is as clear evidence of the existence of God as the manifestation of God's control over the mighty forces of nature. It is a testimony to God's spiritual manifestation being just as clear as his physical or material expression. So the lesson that a divinely blessed temporal successorship or caliphate can be determined on whether it is based on a genuine spiritual foundation. This is the lesson. In these verses, a prophecy is given to the early Muslims. At a time of being in total and utter distress, being cruelly persecuted and tortured, the very continued existence of their faith being threatened, they were told that their sincere faith in the Lord and their perseverance under the most trying circumstances will manifest in God making them rulers. This was a thought that could not have been imagined under the circumstances of the time, and which the world eventually witnessed as the greatest conquest in history. Therefore, the real successorship to Holy Prophet Muhammad is in the spiritual sphere. The first four rightly guided caliphs mentioned earlier this morning were extraordinary in this respect, being both temporal and spiritual successors. Thereafter, the spiritual dispensation was carried on through saintly persons and primarily through those known as mujaddids. These spiritual caliphs are reformers or revivers of the faith. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad explained it in these words, "Verily, God shall raise from this community at the beginning of every century one who will reform, revive for it its religion." Abu Dawud, Kitab Sunan. These mujaddids, being the spiritual successors to Prophet Muhammad, do not add anything to the religion, nor take away anything from it. They only renovate and reinstate lost faith in the hearts of the people. Renovate and reinstate. They are persons of sterling character, having deep knowledge of the Holy Quran, and reflect the noble qualities of Prophet Muhammad in every age. They achieve a very high spiritual stage, thereby receiving communications from on high, known as wahi-e-velayat or saintly revelations. During the past 14 centuries, there have been persons who have been recognized as the mujaddids of their respective eras. To name a few, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali of Khorasan, Persia, in the 5th century of the Islamic era, Ibn Arabi of Eastern Spain in the 7th century of the Islamic era, and Shah Waliullah of Delhi of India in the 12th century, etc. As you can see, this was from all corners of the known Muslim world at that time. In the current age, the person who claimed to be the mujaddid of the time was Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the founder of Ahmadiyya movement. In reference to verse 55 of chapter 24 of the Holy Quran quoted earlier, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad explains, quote, "Thus God Almighty states that He shall send caliphs of the Holy Prophet from time to time." The word caliph has been adopted to indicate that they shall be heirs of the Holy Prophet and partake of his blessings as used to happen in the earliest ages. The faith shall be revived at their hands, and security shall be established after the prevalence of fear, that is, they shall come at times when there would be disruption to the Muslim community. The word mujaddid and caliph are similar. Accordingly, as a mujaddid, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad's teachings focused on the Islamic basis of spirituality. He expounded on the deep insights contained in the Holy Quran that not only served as food for the soul, but also for the mind. His teachings and lessons presented Islam as a spiritual faith and one that resonates with logic and rationality. And as a practical matter, his teachings showed how the religion of Islam provides solutions to mankind in an age consumed by materialism and disregard for higher moral values. Wars for land resources and power over the past century, including the two world wars, reveal the terribly destructive potential of man that had never been witnessed before, millions upon millions having been killed. And this reform initiative by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was based on the premise that the achievement of peace in the world is dependent on the spiritual reformation of the individual. The reformation of the individual is what leads to the reformation of a community, then of an entire people, and then of all humanity. In essence, it was called for individual responsibility to bring about peace to the world. And integral to this initiative of reviving this principle of individual reformation amongst Muslims was to remove the belief that Islam condones hostility, aggression, and intolerance. Looking around the world today, we see how aptly identified this focus and how imperative it is in order to establish peace in the modern world, whether it is in Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Tunisia, Nigeria, or even places like Philippines. We see the emergence of radical groups causing destruction in the name of Islam in order to justify their political agendas. See, this reform by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was aimed at stripping these misguided people from the garb of Islam that they wear to claim authority and to recruit the ignorant and uninformed. In a very moving passage in a book titled Message of Peace, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad explains that the God of Islam is described in the Quran as God of love, mercy, and compassion, and that intolerance is inconsistent with an understanding of the divine in this faith. He wrote, "Friends, ponder for God's sake and say whether such beliefs are acceptable to reason, whether there's anything in human conscience which responds to them. I cannot see how a rational being can believe on the one hand that God is the Lord of the whole universe, and yet say on the other that he has withdrawn his fostership and care from the greater part of the world, and that his love and mercy is confined to one people and one country." He goes on to write, "Our God has not withheld his bounty from any people. The powers and faculties which he bestowed on the ancient peoples of India have also been bestowed on the Arabs, the Persians, the Syrians, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Europeans, and the Americans. For all of them, the earth of God serves as a floor, and for all of them, his sun, moon, and stars give light. All of them derive benefit from the air, water, fire, and other things created by God. And all of them use the produce of the earth. These liberal ways of God teach us that we also should do good to all humanity and should not be narrow-minded nor limit our sympathy for anyone." Now, as a consequence to articulating this position of the universality of God and the need for man to manifest the same sympathetic approach in his or her dealings with others, it was necessary for Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad to call out the extremist religious personalities who were preaching a distorted and perverted interpretation of the concept of jihad in Islam. And relatedly, he called attention to the true character of the Holy Prophet Mohammed, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, as a mercy to all nations and not a proponent of warfare, as many have tried to portray him. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad wrote, "The ignorant religious leaders have greatly deceived the masses and declared acts of brutality, cruelty, and inhumanity to be the key to attaining paradise. The ignorant ones have merely heard the word jihad and are using it as a pretext and cover for satisfying their own selfish ends, or purely out of fanaticism and lunacy are perpetrating bloodshed." This movement created by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad advocated the belief that Muslims do not need to focus on being strong militarily to defend their faith from others, but rather the true and pure teachings of Islam are such that if presented to the people, its beauty would be naturally apparent, and that it is how Islam spread in the early years, not by force, as many have come to believe. And he named the movement Ahmadiyya after the Holy Prophet Muhammad's other name, Ahmad. which signifies one who is patient and shows perseverance in times of trials and reflects the period of Holy Prophet Muhammad's life in Makkah, in which he and early Muslims suffered severe persecution and bore it all patiently. And members of this movement pledged to revive this example of the Holy Prophet Muhammad's character and promote the spiritual basis of the Islamic faiths to others. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad explained, quote, "Those who join my army, I order them to give up this idea of a jihad of war and rather to purify their hearts, develop and nurture their feelings of mercy towards all humankind, and be helpers of those in distress and suffering. They should spread peace on earth, as this is how their religion will spread." Today, the Lahore Ahmadiyya movement continues this legacy of the work of the Mujaddid, spiritual caliph of the time. It is a movement that works to establish an academic approach to the study and interpretation of Islam, thereby challenging the extremist ideologies of radical groups that use a perverted interpretation of Islam to further their political ambitions. In essence, the Lahore Ahmadiyya movement is the anti-ISIS of our age, of our day. Its goal is the furtherance of spirituality, not political dominance. It stands for peaceful coexistence and not oppression. And it relies on the behalf that sincere faith and perseverance is mightier than any military force. I recall once more the words of the Holy Quran, quote, "Or who answers the distress when he calls upon him and removes the evil." We pray that our humble efforts, along with those of many other faithful servants of the one God, will contribute to establishing peace on earth. Amen. Thank you for your attention.